webinars, but this is one of the unique ones where we are going to go live on LinkedIn also. So this is a question many of you may have wondered that, hey, I applied for this job, but I'm really wondering why I didn't make it. Or was this job really right for me? Do I have the qualifications that really put me in the best spot? Or did I do everything right? If any one of you have ever wondered about those questions, then probably we have some answers for you here. I'm joined here with my friends from BC Forward here, and we are really going to answer the questions that many of you have either asked yourself or even didn't even figure it out that was there even a problem for you. So I am Rupal Thanawala. I am Managing Director of Trident Systems in Indiana. But then I'm wearing another hat also here. I'm a tech and STEM editor of Indianapolis Reporter, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session today. I'm joined here with my friends from BC Forward, and I will let them introduce themselves. As you can see their names here. So we'll go in the sequence from left to right. So we'll start with Indea and we'll uh, end with Andrea. So good afternoon, everyone. And Indea, I would let you introduce yourself.
Hello, good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Indea Snorden, and I'm an IT program manager with BC Forward.
Hi, good afternoon, morning, evening, as Indea says. Thank you for joining us today. We are definitely happy to have you here. I'm Anthony Simmons. I'm the Director of Account Management for BC Forward.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carlotta Hairston. I am an Associate Director in the Project Management Office at BC Forward.
Hi, my name is SaRetta Brown. I'm staff attorney here at BC Forward.
And hi, everyone. This is Andrea Gaddie Bartlett, and I'm the Vice President of Digital Strategy and Agile Transformation at BC Forward. And I will hand it back to Rupal.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your wonderful introduction. So many of you could be here for the first time for this session and would be wondering what is BC Forward and who they are. So BC Forward is a Black-owned business solutions and staffing firm. They leverage the expertise of their employees and processes to assist solving their customers' business problems. Founded in 1998, BC Forward has scaled its capabilities and services globally while keeping focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI is a core value of BC Forward and it's part of its DNA. BC Forward is a thought leader in this topic, and this group of leaders will share how BC Forward is practicing every single day inclusive hiring practices. So we are really going to hear from the leaders who don't only talk the talk but walk the walk here. BC Forward Diversity Impact Sourcing Program is their forward-thinking diverse impact sourcing program, which helps their clients develop an environment of inclusion that leads to higher moral and increased productivity and retention. BC Forward tracks diverse impact sourcing candidate outcomes from presentation through offer and report diversity data in a regular cadence to ensure that their clients' diversity goals are realized. And later on, I'm going to ask Andrea to even share the metrics of BC Forward diversity metrics that is so much ahead of their peers. And as if many of you are fully aware that, as we look around in our industry, one of the biggest challenges, particularly in tech industry, is the representation of diverse workforce, whether it is African-American, Latinx, women, or Asian Americans. However, the bigger challenge we have seen is that we have at least improved a little bit on a pipeline development, but however, at the executive level, that problem is even the gap is becoming wider and wider. So when you talk about that problem, we want to really hear from a leader and a group of executives and leaders from BCforward, how they have solved this problem and how can they actually give us the tips that we all can implement in our business every single day. So my very first question is going to be for Andrea. Andrea, we have talked about the problem, but where do you think where bias appears in hiring processes, and how do you quantify? And I can see actually in the slide over here that you have put it in a different buckets, that how from recruiting to all the way in compensation, bias exists in like end-to-end process. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
No, absolutely. Implicit and unconscious bias shows up throughout the entire hiring processes as well. And so when we are helping to provide talent for our customers, and also counseling them on how to remove implicit and unconscious bias, we look at the entire hiring process. So we ensure that whether it's in the recruiting process or they're looking at job descriptions or the way that they handle resumes, interviews, and even compensation, that we're looking at each of those steps and ensuring that bias is being removed from those steps. The other thing that we know is that job descriptions are full of unconscious bias indicators. Most job descriptions are heavily male focused with tons of industry jargon and words that make women and people of color either feel left out or uninterested in applying. Some job descriptions are over-engineered, asking for too many years of experience or too much education for the role. And so what we do is we assist our customers, and we do this also as well when we're hiring, to ensure that those things aren't barriers of entry for people of color and for women.
Now that leads me to really actually one of my personal experience when I was actually applying for a job many moons back. And every time I would open up a job description, and I felt as if, they were asking for something that I did not qualify for. But then I have often felt that, my peers and probably male counterparts found it very comfortable applying for those jobs. And I just heard you saying, that as job descriptions are over-engineered, do you think that these job descriptions are really designed with either someone in mind, or that or it's an implicit bias, so I'm not even pointing the fingers here, but is it written in a way that often women or people of color feel really intimidated and feel very overwhelming feeling it gives us, that they just wouldn't even apply for? Is that what you guys feel? And maybe, I can even ask some questions about, that what is the best way to even respond when you see this kind of a job description, and how do we prepare our resumes, And maybe I can start with Indea and probably SaRetta, and Andrea, you can also jump in.
So yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Rupal, because just in looking at the slide that's up, there are a lot of, like, just as Andrea said, things are over-engineered. And I think what helps in different job descriptions that I've seen is if corporations were to lean more towards the skills that they're actually looking for, and actually leaning more towards, okay, this is why we're hiring this person to come in and help us with these organizational goals. That kind of strips it all down from looking for an ideal candidate, but it focuses more on goals and skills versus, and just like in the slide says as well, avoiding that must-haves and maybe saying, hey, this is maybe a fundamental thing that we're looking for, and these are nice to haves. And just kind of breaking it down more into a skill place. I know I was actually watching a TED Talk where a woman that created a female coding organization said that by the 5th grade, girls are taught to be perfect in that they have to get straight A's and smile and look nice all the time. And boys are encouraged to take risks, like go to the highest bar of the jungle gym and jump, you know. So there are things that I believe job descriptions can do to help us feel more like we're engaged in a mission, more than just we need X, Y, Z. If that is helpful.
No, I think Indea, that is wonderful. You know, SaRetta, do you have anything to add to that?
I would say from the legal perspective, it also is important to take a different perspective in looking at our job descriptions, because job descriptions do get brought into lawsuits. So when we are, the job descriptions do become very important when lawsuits are filed and they look back and they see what were we putting out there when we were doing our interview process and we were looking for candidates, and what was the criteria that we put out there. And sometimes those things can come back and they can open a company up to liability that you were not exactly anticipating. So being cautious on the front end and being careful about the language that we use and how we position ourselves in the beginning is very important. So these are things that are very important for our companies to review and to look at and to take a fine-tooth comb and take a step back and look at the language that we're using right now. And maybe instead of throwing the kitchen sink in our job descriptions, we maybe dial it back a bit, because sometimes I think we want to put everything out there, and sometimes that can hurt us a bit. So I believe that we put in the slide some very good key points to look at when putting our job descriptions out there and diversifying the candidate pool that we have that comes through our.
Actually, yeah, you bring a good point, because I'm just wondering, like, you know, how it can hurt the companies that, you know, some of the most qualified people probably may not even apply for the job because, you know, the job description is extensively, as we just used the word, over-engineered. But the second thing I also wonder is that people just wonder, like, that, hey, is this job description written for one person, or they want really 3 persons job? And I've heard a feedback once that the individual who was applying for the job almost felt that the company is expecting too much, because either they're consolidating 3 jobs literally and trying to push one person for that job, which was not their intention, but it's just that, you know, they put everything on their wish list into the job description, you know. But I think, SaRetta, I really like your point that you highlighted. Probably many of our friends on this call are probably not having a lot of a legal background, and they could have not even thought about it, that, you know, a job description can also be challenged. And, you know, it can lead into a lawsuit. So I think that's an excellent point. Andrea, do you have anything else to add to that conversation?
Yes, and the other thing that I would add is don't describe the person, because if you're and you want to describe, again, what Indea talked about is you want to describe the skill set or the mission that the job description should be accomplishing. Because if you are already in a non-diverse organization and you're just constantly describing the current situation, you put in an area of a barrier for any additional diversity, right? Because you're describing people that already are in the organization that are not diverse. Or if it's you're wanting more young people, for example, in the organization, that goes back to the over-engineering of the job description. I saw on LinkedIn a job description for a marketing intern, and they were asking for deep domain expertise for a marketing intern. So, or we see job descriptions. I see Anthony's laughing. We'll see job descriptions for 10 or more years of machine learning expertise, right? So it's like you're asking for, if you're wanting to have more early career professionals in your organization, then again, don't over-engineer the JD or the job description. If you're wanting new college hires, or you're wanting diversity, then don't ask them for experience that does not even exist in the industry. So that's all I would also add, Rupal.
No, that's excellent. So I'm putting on my hiring manager hat, and I'm just wondering that, okay, so now we have crossed the hurdle. We have got the right job description in place. How do I make sure that me and my team of individuals who are actually now in the process of doing the recruiting, how do we make sure that there is no bias in now the recruiting process, because that's the next step, that, okay, so now we have a pool of resources, and we want to make sure that we make the right decision. Who would like to talk on that? Maybe Anthony, Indea, Andrea, team, pick whoever wants to pick that question, because I'm always wondering that, now why, if we had right intentions, how do we do it now right?
Sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll start there. I mean, it's definitely something that you need to look at when you're getting and you're starting recruiting. We get to see a lot of resumes. We get to see a lot of people to go out and try to fill positions to help our clients. But when we're talking about trying to increase the diversity in a business and a company, then we want to go and look at the areas where the diverse people are, right? Where we can recruit in the areas where the diverse talent is going to be. If you're trying to go on vacation and you want to go to the beach, you don't start looking at mountain resorts, right? You start looking at areas that have beach and beach chairs and sun. If you're looking for diverse candidates, you don't go to places where the diversity isn't that great. You may want to expand your look outside of your state. You may want to expand your look into HBCUs, right, where diversity is a strong background of how those universities have started, and they provide very good candidates and talent out of those universities. I'm a product of one. Indea, what do you have?
Yeah, Anthony, I mean, I just really want to chime into what you said. I mean, I think that well, first of all, I just want to talk about the mindset. Sometimes when people are hiring, they look from a certain lens and they think, oh, I went to this school and it's the best school, and that's the only place that I want to look at. Or they look at a certain type. And the HBCUs is on point exactly with what you said, because it's a diverse group. But sometimes people think that just because somebody gets an education from another place, that it's not as good as where they got it from. So that mindset needs to go away, because the whole key to diversity is when you're able to see how you shine, you can open your mind to say that, hey, somebody else has a great experience that they can offer as well. So HBCUs actually provide 27% of the work, like 27% of the African-American workforce that goes into STEM fields. HBCUs actually provide that into the workforce. So they provide a solid group of individuals that come from a diverse pool. So I believe it's HBCUs, and also if you tap into HBCUs and their networks, like there's National Society for Black Engineers, there's Society of Hispanic Engineers, there's all these awesome organizations that, like Hidden Genius Project is an awesome organization, Code 2040, Yes We Code, Black Women in Science and Engineering, BWise. There's all these different networks that have all these diverse groups of professionals that you can tap into. And the key is leveraging those groups that you have, and also your internal diverse hires. they can hire their friends. They know a pool of people that they were educated with and that they've come into contact with as well. So leveraging your own groups and expanding from there. Andrea?
India, and don't miss out on BDPA, you know, the Black Data Processor Association.
Yes,
Actually, we both were on the board
BDPA as
together,
well,
right?
See, exactly. See, Rupal knows, like, there's so many, to me, like BDPA, there's so many grassroots organizations that attract diverse talent. If you tap into those organizations, they know where to find people. So using your community.
Using your community, and also one of the things that I have personally had good luck with, which I would like to share, is, you know, publishing even your jobs in different platforms, you know. I think that is also very important, you know. So like, of course, I'm from Indianapolis Reporter, so that is where, you know, my lot of experience come from, where we have seen that, you know, putting a job job advertisement in those kind of media outlets is, you know, you're more likely to get your jobs being seen by the individuals that, you know, you are trying to target. And another one that I have also personally experienced is, you know, even if, first of all, I'm a big fan of HBCU, but at the same time, even if you are not, you are, of course, your first, yes, you have to go to HBCUs, you know, otherwise I can be beaten up by some of the attendees, my friends who are listening to it. But no, but and even different colleges have their own resource student groups, you know, so they are also a great resource I have personally found. So if I go to even IU or Purdue, Ball State, which is our, you know, in Indiana, local colleges, you know, the first thing I have done is, you know, I talked to their, you know, diversity office, and I've actually asked them, what are your student organizations? Can you please give me the names of them? And particularly when I'm having a job, I'm hosting a job fair there, or if I'm having a networking event with the students, if I'm recruiting out of the college students, then making sure that those students are invited. My job fair information has been published in their newsletters, or of course nowadays everybody has social media platforms where, you know, I can push my information that, hey, you know, we are coming to the campus and we are recruiting. So I think that is the one thing when I was, of course, responsible for college hires, and of course my market was only Indiana, where we don't have many HBCUs. I had a lot of luck, you know, going through those student organizations. And where I also had a very good luck is, of course, you know, as you just mentioned about all of these organizations, but then also talking to different sororities and those groups, because, you know, there they have their friends, you know, and I know that they're so tightly connected that, you know, if you share the information with one individual or their leadership, you know, then they're definitely going to share amongst their fellows, sorors and others, you know. Andrea, do you have anything else to add to this conversation?
No, you guys have definitely hit on everything. I would just add again, utilizing your diverse employees to help you find others like themselves. So we do that quite a bit. I know Anthony and I are always like, hey, if you know someone for this role, please send them our way, send that person our way. And you'd be surprised. It really helps with not only morale, but then also helps with bringing in diverse talent as well.
No, that is wonderful.
I would
SaRetta, you
love
have a
to
point?
Yeah, I would love to just jump in. I wasn't really slated for this slide, but I just wanted to jump in. A friend of mine is a small business owner, and she had another friend that was just like looking to fill some jobs, and she posted on Facebook. And so she was able to find 3 diversity hires through Facebook. And so please don't be shy about asking a friend to post via social media, because that was very successful and efficient and quick. So don't be shy about tapping into your own personal network for them to tap into their own personal network, because she was very proud to help. And she posted that 3 people were able to get hired very quickly. And that was something that I was very impressed with, how quickly she was able to do that.
No, you make a good point, SaRetta. As I was just earlier mentioning that probably 10 years back, we all used newsletters and email as, one of the vehicles to reach out to different students or even, experienced hires, versus now the social media is such a powerful platform to reach out to people. And it's just, that's where you get more hits, and then you can actually really have a very targeted messaging going to certain groups, if ever you are trying to target a certain group. So, this next slide is very intriguing to me because often people write resumes. So, of course, now I want to, shift the gears and have some coaching for our candidates here. That assuming, somebody is writing the resume, what's the best way to put your content in a way that, first of all, it gets someone's attention, but then also how can we avoid bias in resume? And again, we have a very experienced panel here, so please chime in. Whoever wants to chime in.
Absolutely. Rupal, so one of the things that, it's not only in how the candidate actually, writes the resume. Sometimes it's a matter of how, me on the other end, how the information is received. I would say that it's important, I encourage, when you put together your resume, to really stick to, focusing on skills and experiences. Try to keep things, I don't know, for lack of a better word, maybe as vanilla as possible. Because sometimes I think you have to challenge yourself as an interviewer, because from my perspective, traditionally coming out of workplaces that have been very non-diverse, sometimes I may have an unconscious bias myself, and I might be looking for someone that looks like a certain prototype, and I really need to reel that back in and really focus on what does it really take to get this this job done, so to speak. And the other thing, because diverse candidates are sometimes put at a disadvantage, I don't want to count somebody out either, just because maybe the resume may not be totally pristine and perfect as I would be expecting it, but to allow some wiggle room. And I think along with that, typically what I try to do with people who are going to participate in the interview panel, to collaborate beforehand, just to kind of get a feel for what their initial impressions are, because I feel that it helps really to have that conversation, because sometimes even in those brief conversations, you might uncover something that they may have some kind of preconceived notion as well. So I think it helps to level the playing ground and make sure that you're really giving that candidate the most optimal opportunity to put their best foot forward as well.
And Carlotta, if I can just piggyback on what you're saying a little bit, and that's, sometimes we have to protect ourselves from ourselves, right? Sometimes we don't realize, as Andrea and Indea mentioned earlier about implicit biases, that we have those. And what we've done in the past is we would take those resumes before we send them out to the hiring manager or the review panel and make them blind, right? So sometimes you might get a resume in that has a picture on it, or you may get a resume in that has an address, location, or some specific information that can trigger a bias from one of your reviewers or your interviewers. And so what we want to try to do, and as Carlotta was mentioning, as much as you can when you're creating your resume, what we want to try to do as letting our reviewers review them is have them focus in on the actual work task that they need to interview, the skill set that the person has, versus what might already be there that might trigger a bias. And, there's some biases that we know. I know I am biased against veterans as a veteran, right? So we have to make sure that we're looking at those things and addressing them when we're trying to bring in and remove those biases out of it. So blind resumeing is a good thing to do. Another thing that you can do to try to get your recruits focused in and just trying to see what their talent is giving them a sample test on the work that you're expecting them to provide. So if you're hiring a developer that's going to be coding in Java, JavaScript, or whatever, maybe you give them a JavaScript example, and now you can actually see their work, and you can respond or rate them based on the actual performance of the script that you have versus any bias that you might get from reviewing the resume as it's written or as it's been presented.
So I had a question.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that I would add, sometimes if you can't give someone a quote unquote test, some of the things that I've done in the past, just have like a standard, maybe scenario or case study or something. That way it levels the playing field. Everyone has the same opportunity to respond to the same thing. And then you're really comparing apples to apples.
No, that's awesome. One question I have is, again, I'm just looking at this one about the age. And I heard this very recently from one of my, one of the person I'm mentoring, that she is in her late 40s. And she thinks that the moment she puts her years of experience, that's a one thing that age discrimination is very hard to hide, particularly even if you do the blind resume. How the formatting we do is, like, of course, you strip off all the, like, of course, the picture, the name, the gender and all. But how do you work with age discrimination? And of course, if you have answered, it's okay, but because that's something just came up in my another panels I was, and of course, I would like to know if there's any guidance any one of you have there.
I think I can kind of take that one, and Rupal, I think I can speak to just the overall resume in and of itself. I think that the people who are handling resumes need to handle them with respect. They need to look at resumes as this is a snapshot of someone's experience, their life, right? The things that they've done in their life, whether they're a veteran, whether they've been working for 20 years or they just graduated from college. There's a respect that needs to come into play when you're reviewing that resume and looking at that resume as this person is sharing with you a piece of their history. And so how does that history kind of how could that help our organization? So I think the bias of age, or whether someone was a veteran or someone's disability, that needs to step away or be pushed away from the person who is reviewing that resume, and they need to show respect for that. I think we just kind of look at them as, hey, these people are just sending all these resumes to me. I don't have time to figure it out. You need to take time and you need to show respect and not just glance over it because, oh, I don't like where that person lives, or I don't like that they were a veteran. Like, those things are the responsibility of the person who's reviewing that resume to take this as a serious step in diversity and inclusion. So that's just why I think we're too flippant about that whole process.
Yeah, because Andrea, when I'm listening, I'm just wondering, and this is what we were trained when I used to work for my previous job, is that you do not want the candidates to feel that, they are at the receiving end, but give them the respect, and of course, give them the feeling that actually we are deeply interested in recruiting them if they are the right person for the job. That means we are at the receiving end and not the candidate, And I think when you turn the table, and as you very well said, is like it just creates a great deal of respect and trust-based relationship throughout the journey. I just wanted to make one comment to our audience. We have been tracking your questions. We will absolutely get to that. I just have a couple of things that I wanted to ask the panelists, and we will absolutely answer your questions. So if you have any comments or questions, please keep posting it in the chat box, All right. So now, of course, we are going to talk about the real process. Now we are in the interviewing process. How do we avoid bias once we are into the interviewing process? And again, I'll open it up to all of you, whoever wants to take that question.
I'll jump in here. I think very similar to actually reviewing the resumes. Again, you still have to stay focused on those skills and experiences, but more importantly, when you're actually in the interview itself, you kind of have to allow for have some grace with that person, because sometimes people are nervous. They may not present as well as they would want to, just because of the nature of the situation. And then also along those lines, you have to remember that you're not trying to clone yourself either. So if we say that we're open to diverse candidates, then you really have to be open to diverse candidates, and you have to know that everyone's not going to look exactly like you, or whatever this prototype is that you may have in your mind. And I think too, a part of that conversation that you're having with the candidate, you don't want to veer off on tangents, because sometimes an experience or something that they may be sharing with you may resonate with you personally, and whether it triggers something good or bad, you may need to table that and just stay true to exactly that may not warrant further exploration at that particular point in time, but stay true to what you're actually trying to do in the interview.
Yep, Carlotta, I can follow up on that with you. And it kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier. During the interview, treat your candidate like a professional, treat them as being competent, and treat them with respect. You also talked about giving people grace. When they show up to interviews, you're nervous. You might be feeling some anxiety. So give people grace during that interviewing process. Something else that we do at BCforward, which we think definitely helps with diversity, and that's having diverse interview panels, right? So that you have people who look like that candidate across the table from them, and you're getting diverse opinions about that person. So those are just some of the things I would say, going back to what SaRetta said about when you're thinking about the legal ramifications, I would script and be consistent about the interview. But SaRetta, I want to throw it over to you to say, what other things do we need to be thinking about legally during the interview process?
I definitely would say a script is a great idea. I would say the more practiced we are, the more consistent we are with and the more intentional about the language that we use, it would keep us from making others feel uncomfortable. I mean, everyone's probably going to feel a little uncomfortable because it's an uncomfortable situation, but we want to, like you keep using the word respect, we want others to feel like we take them serious and that we are reviewing the resumes and that we are treating the interview process with respect. So I would say, yes, a script is a great idea to have pre-scripted interview questions that, and when we have the panel to think about who's asking the questions and does it make sense for the male to ask certain questions, the female to ask certain questions, the diversity, the persons of color. Like, I don't know, you know, to be intentional about how we're asking questions, who's asking those questions, who's sitting across from us, where we're sitting in the room, how we're sitting in that room, who's facing the door, those kinds of things. When we are intentional about where we're sitting, how we're talking, and who's in that room, we are creating an environment where we are making people feel comfortable, and we're also setting ourselves up for having an experience, because it matters how we hire and it matters who we hire.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And I'm seeing a comment from another attendee here. They say that their company has a rule to at least have one female on the interview panel. I think that's an excellent point because as I just heard from different panelists here, that it's very important to make them feel comfortable. And of course, do your homework. Be prepared.
Yes.
As an interviewer, we also have to be prepared and take this job very seriously, because you know we are going to make an investment in this person, so we want to make sure that you know we come prepared and you know give them all the attention that they need, you know, and do our homework well, right? So now, most important thing, money, money, money. This is where a lot of biases there, and I do not have my statistics in front of me, but then what I've heard is, you know, that white women are paid only certain cents to a dollar. A male has been paid, but women of color is paid even less. So there's definitely something, you know, to be said about, you know, there's a bias in compensation. And this matters a lot to everyone, you know, many a times, you know, we can hire a person, but the person is very uncomfortable once they uncover that, okay, you know, hey, I've been not compensated very well. And probably that could be a point where they don't want to work anymore with you, or their engagement is not the same. And there are a lot of other ramifications, of course, with that. And I'm sure SaRetta would have something to say about some legal challenges that leads to that.
Yes.
So how do we avoid bias in compensation?
So
And who wants to take that first?
yeah, so there are state and local laws that have been enacted to fight enabling people to discriminate by compensation. So starting off by preventing asking what your previous salary was. So depending on what state you're in, you cannot ask what your salary history was, because that keeps people from pigeonholing their candidates into a certain salary bracket. Some states and local localities have prevented employers from setting your compensation based on your salary history. So it takes it a step further. So you can't ask about salary history, and then you can't base that person's salary based on their salary history. Certain states and localities have prevented employers from retaliating against their employees for discussing their compensation. So that keeps employees, because, you know, certain places, that keeps down drama when employees can't discuss compensation. However, there is a drawback to that. When there's not an open discussion about compensation, then there are individuals that get kind of left behind in that they are receiving way less compensation than their male counterparts, maybe their Caucasian counterparts. And at that point, then they're receiving less compensation. And if they talk about it, then they're retaliated against. And so then it's like, now I'm receiving less money because of color or gender. And then I'm retaliated against for discussing my compensation, which adds insult to injury. So there's certain laws that are in place to keep these types of situations from happening. And of course, my job is to keep my company from being sued. So these are the type of things that you want to be careful about to keep your company from ending up in litigation. So you want to be very careful about how you're addressing past salary, how you're addressing issues of compensations when that comes up in the employer-employee dynamic. So if there is an issue, please take that to legal. I always say take things to legal before you make a quick response, because you don't want to set your company up for failure. And you also want all of your coworkers or employees to feel valued, and you want them to feel acknowledged. So the best way to do that is to hear concerns and to bring those to the proper people, to go through the proper process, to keep everyone feeling heard and acknowledged through this process, and to give them the respect that they deserve.
Yes, SaRetta, and if I can just jump in and just point out the one thing on the slide that I think is important in that first bullet, that
Right.
We are, for new career professionals, right? That salary, that first salary for those companies that continually ask, what were you getting paid at your last position? That first salary they get can set them up for a career of being underpaid next to their peers, right? So it's very important for us on the company side that's doing the hiring to look at our job, our positions, our salary locations as a benchmark across industry for that particular role, and make sure that we're bringing folks in within that benchmark, within that pay scale, to make sure that they're keeping up with their peers, not only in-house in the company, but across the industry. I've seen where we've had, not we as in BCforward, and previous companies that I've been in, where we've had female employees who've had to get incentivized or had their salaries increased outside of the normal pay cycle, just so that they can get into the benchmark of their role, because they were brought in so much lower than everyone else, right? So it's incumbent upon us as a company to make sure that we're doing that. And then us as folks who are out looking, do your homework. Look at the role that you're applying for and make sure that what they're asking you for is adequate compensation for the role that you're being asked to do.
No, that's an excellent point. And, especially many individuals, particularly in our tech industry, are transitioning and pivoting their careers. And so obviously their previous job and their previous salary may not be consistent with, where they're going to the next job. So I think this was a great conversation. We have just 10 minutes left, and I want to absolutely address all the questions. We will try to be brief, but of course, anybody can take any questions. So the very first question I've seen here is, along those lines, share what catches your eye in the opening concise summary on a resume. So when you're reviewing when resume comes to you, what catches your eye? Who wants to take that?
Do any of the things, so all of us have heard, tailor your resume to the position that you're trying to do. And usually the way when I do mine, that part is the tailorable part. The job descriptions, what I've done in my past history is what I've done in my past history. But that part up there is the first thing that anyone sees. And I can tailor that to say, if the job is asking for someone who's done an agile transformation, I will put agile transformation in here, and then it will show in the description, so that people are engaged right up front to do that.
I agree with
Anthony
that's on that.
Indea, go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I was going to say I agree with Anthony on that. What typically catches my eye on resumes is when people can do the results. Like, I was involved in the transformation, or I helped increase. A lot of times, I think I was taught in my first job when I was in sales that you have to kind of have a goodies bag for yourself. And a lot of people, we don't think about that. Like when we've done something, we don't always think about, hey, I actually helped improve productivity or something like that. Like they were able to say, hey, if I wasn't here, they may not have been able to be as productive, and especially in agile situations. Like a lot of people that are doing resumes don't think about that. But when they put that in the resume, I think it makes them stand out.
Mhm.
Take an inventory on yourself. I think we all could spend some time to take inventory.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And anyone else?
I can also say that what I see on resumes is that sometimes women will not describe what they personally did to drive an outcome in a role that they were in. They will use the word we or the team. And I would advise women in the future when they are looking at their resume or redoing their resume to truly think about the value that they brought to the organization and not dilute it by saying that everyone else around you had to assist to make that happen. So that's just one of the things that I've noticed.
Yeah, and I would add just last thing that I was coached is that, put as much tangible outcome or data into your resume. For example, I led a team of 6 individuals. Our company revenue was this much, as much as you're able to share, please share, because then a person who's interviewing you or reading your resume can truly quantify your contributions and what you have been working. Saying just a large team could be 4 or 40, So if it's possible, quantify as much data as possible, that sounds real to people and they can immediately say, this is what it is, Okay, the next question says, what's your take on having multiple interviews and then having to consistently put together a presentation?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier about over engineering and making your candidates jump through hoops, and especially if they didn't describe that to you prior or during the interviewing process, prior to that interviewing process, and then you see yourself constantly thinking you've gotten to the end of the road, and then there's one more thing that they've got to throw. They've got another hoop that you've got to jump through, that can come across as a microaggression, like we're just not sure about you, so we're going to continue, right, to make you try to prove yourself. I would think about that company's culture before moving forward.
No, that's a great point. So we have just 5 minutes left, and I want to encourage anyone to ask we can take probably one more question. But while we wait for the questions, Andrea, I want to put you on a spot right now, and I want to understand from you, and of course, anybody else can also jump in, is that when we're talking about having inclusive hiring practices, and we started off a conversation with what is the problem. In last 50 plus minutes, we have talked about what are the techniques and strategies to address it. But then now I want to talk about the results. In the very beginning, I just shared that, well, in tech industry, depending on the demographics, it's the geographic demographics and industry, there's a high tech or it's manufacturing. And, for example, African Americans represent anywhere from 2% to 5.3%, and I can give you all the statistics that I have. But how BCforward has achieved it, and are you comfortable sharing some data? Because, now that is a real substance,
Yeah.
Are you comfortable?
I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable because we actually drink our own champagne. say it that way. So I'm
Can I join?
I'm proud to say that we track our diversity metrics across race, ethnicity, gender, veteran status, and disability status. Our compliance organization tracks that for us. And we, at the end of each year, because it's being tracked at different cadences throughout the year, but then we report on our annual numbers. I can proudly say that BCforward is 48% female organization. So, so I can proudly say that. I can say that African American, it's almost 21% African American, 13% Hispanic, almost 9% Asian. So we can say that our numbers surpass the industry when you look at the STEM industry and the staffing industry as a whole. So yes, I am, and also 5% disability status as well, and a large veterans population at BCforward. Some of our best project managers are veterans. They bring this amazing expertise to the table, and we're very proud of our veteran population. So.
Okay, so you're still not done. I have to throw a curveball now. We also discussed about is that, one of the biggest challenges in our industry is that, we do not have diversity at the leadership level. Do you have anything in your back pocket to answer that one?
I can say that the BCforward leadership team is mostly female. We have a small leadership team because we are an entrepreneurial and very nimble organization, but our CFO is a female that sits on our on Justin Christian's leadership team. And then myself and Jen Franklin are also females who sit on his leadership team. So again, we have a very diverse and very female leadership team at BCforward.
Wow, that's amazing. We are almost at the hour, the closing time. I want to thank entire BCforward team for not only just talking about the problem, how to solve it, and probably also shed the light on how you have successfully done it. I think that's the most important thing we all can. Personally, I've learned a lot from you guys, although I have known BCforward for many years, but of course, I never had the deep appreciation for how you all are practicing this, inclusive hiring practices, and of course, been one of the, the North Star, as a diverse consulting firm, and you're probably one of the top 10 nationally, if I'm correct. So I made tons of notes. Probably I'll post it on LinkedIn, or probably this also gives me a reason to write something over the weekend so that I can put everything concisely. And for those who have been attending this session, whether on a webinar or on a LinkedIn, you all can see the recording. I'm sure, on one of our BCforward's platform, they're going to publish this recording. So if you have missed it, please tell, or if any of your friends or colleagues have missed it, please ask them to, visit back to that LinkedIn posting. There will be, of course, some instructions on how you can listen to the recording. And if you have any questions, please post it on a BCforward's LinkedIn page. This panelist and myself would love to answer your questions if we could not answer it in this session. And once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Heading to Andrea's
Thank
office to find
you.
that campaign.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.